Part 36. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 351. Chapter 351 I am not a soft persimmon. The emperor is currently accompanied by a beautiful woman, so he has no time to see Queen Zhengzi. Even though everything was within Queen Zhen 11's expectation, she still couldn't help but secretly curse the old pervert in her heart. But on the surface, Queen Zhen 11 showed her full concern for the emperor. Not only did she stand in the courtyard of Longjian Palace and shout out how worried she was, but she also blamed ghosts and gods for today's events, threatening that only by letting people leave the palace to pray for blessings at Hyogyeo Temple can the danger be averted. The guards and gatekeepers of Longjian Palace were frightened by what Queen Zhengzi said. Emperor Yongchang was really given a splitting headache by Empress Zhen 11, and he couldn't veto Empress Zhen 11's kindness in person, so he could only call Bai Tu over and said, "Go tell the Empress that you can do whatever she wants, as long as you don't disturb my peace here." It was Yuning who was massaging Emperor Yongchang's head and said softly, "The queen is not a person who believes in ghosts and gods. People always believe in ghosts and gods when they are worried. The queen is also worried about me, just like you just sacrificed your life to save me," Emperor Yongchang said, grabbing the catkins that were being kneaded on his temples. Yuning's eyes quickly flashed with reluctance, but in the end she did not continue to speak. Outside the Longjian Palace, after hearing Bai Tu's message, Queen Zhengzi walked towards the palace gate with Fan Qinjiao, who was dressed as a palace servant, with satisfaction. The guards guarding the palace gate saw that the queen had come in person, and when they heard that the emperor nodded, they didn't even dare to ask more questions, so they quickly let Fan Qinjiao go. Seeing Fan Qinjiao hurriedly leaving the palace, Queen Zhen 11 couldn't help but squeeze her hands under her sleeves. Victory or defeat is decided in one fell swoop. Empress Zhen 11 took a deep breath to adjust her demeanor, then turned around and returned to Fenji Palace. As soon as he entered the courtyard, Lily came over and said in a low voice, "Queen, concubine Yu is here." Queen Zhengzi. It came really quickly. With Lily's support, Queen Zhen 11 entered the side hall and saw concubine Yu sitting on a soft couch. Over the years, concubine Yu has been proud of the emperor's favor. She has long been accustomed to declaring war and seizing control in front of the queen. Now she has no intention of getting up to salute and greet the queen when she comes in. Lily felt sorry for the empress's indifference, so she wanted to help the empress to sit on the other side of the couch as usual, but she didn't expect that the empress stopped where she was. Concubine Yu was stunned when she saw the queen standing not far away, but she didn't care. She just said to herself, "I just came from the emperor's side. I heard that the emperor is fine." Speaking of today's events, we have to thank the empress for this. It was the people around the empress who understood the pain and warmth that calmed the emperor's panic when he fell into the water. How could Queen Zhengzi not hear such words that were meant to rub salt into the wound? But at this moment, Queen Zhen 11 looked indifferent and looked at concubine Yu and said, "I must be happy to have someone willing to take care of the emperor for me. However, concubine Yu is sitting in my palace now, feeling so condescending and proud. But it makes me a little confused. Concubine Yu is so happy when there is a capable person around me. Is concubine Yu really not afraid of being gossiped about?" Concubine Yu was stunned and looked at Queen Zhen 11 in disbelief. How come the soft persimmon she has pinched for half her life is starting to clenched? Empress Zhen 11 paused and said, "I have always been in poor health, so I am exempted from some complicated etiquette. But concubine Yu, you have to be self-aware as a person. My generosity does not mean that you will be in this position. The reason why the palace claims to be the king or hegemony is because concubine Yu has never recognized me as the queen in her heart. Concubine Yu has never admitted it. But these words must never be spoken. The queen was appointed by the emperor. If she directly denied it, wouldn't it be a slap in the face for the emperor?" Concubine Yu gritted her teeth, stood up and knelt on the ground unwillingly. I am the concubine who has neglected etiquette, please don't take it to your heart. Queen Zhen 11 took a step forward and sat on the soft couch, waved her hand and interrupted, Sister Yu, please go back if you have nothing to do. Now I have an official lady to take care of here, so I really don't have time to talk to Sister Yu anymore. Pull. Concubine Yu froze again as she knelt on the ground, even the words she had prepared were stuck in her throat. The emperor doted on her when she was young. Later, the emperor loved her son very much, even more than the prince. Therefore, concubine Yu had already regarded the queen as her defeated general. So much so that facing such a powerful Queen Zhengzi, concubine Yu felt that her brain was a little exhausted. The queen, did you take the wrong medicine? Of course Queen Zhen 11 must be tough, otherwise how can she drive concubine Yu out? It's just that concubine Yu is not a vegetarian. She will never leave easily before her goal is achieved. I will keep the queen's teachings in mind. I am also worried about Princess Jingping when I come here today. Concubine Yu has shown enough love for Fan Qinjiao, so it is reasonable for her to come to care about her now. Queen Zhen 11 looked at the room inside and said, Princess Jingping was frightened a lot today. She fell asleep not long after she came to this palace. I will convey Sister Yu's wishes to you when Princess Jingping wakes up. After that, I will definitely ask her to pay my respects to Sister Yu in person. Although concubine Yu still lowered her head, the corners of her lips slightly curved. Sure enough, the informant at the palace gate was right. Fan Qinjiao was just sent out of the palace by the queen. Otherwise, why is the queen blocking us here now? What a coincidence, I brought Dr. Sun here with me. Mr. Ying, who was standing at the door, heard this and quickly let Dr. Sun, who was waiting aside, in. Imperial physician Sun knelt in front of Queen Zhen 11, falling into the water is a small matter, but if the cold, panic, and evil spirits are not expelled from the body in time, I beg the queen to let Wei Chen treat Princess Jingping, so as not to delay the condition. Lily frowned on the side. You said it so sincerely. If the queen doesn't agree, wouldn't she be able to kill a villain who doesn't care about her own safety? Empress Zhen 11 made it clear that she would not take hard or soft advice. Just now when Ji Yuanjing was here, she had already asked Princess Jingping for her pulse. Instead of wasting time here, Sister Yu, it would be better for Dr. Sun to go to other officials. Miss, please ask for Ping An's pulse. After all, among the people entering the palace this time, there's no telling who will be the future prince and concubine. Concubine Yu. Is this queen born in the year of snake today? Why is she so difficult to deal with? In the end, imperial physician Sun was just a minister. Seeing the queen speak like this, even if he wanted to help concubine Yu, it was hard for him to speak again. Concubine Yu took a deep breath and whispered, in that case, I will not disturb the queen. With a sigh of relief, he really stood up. Just when concubine Yu turned around, she suddenly looked at Aunt Ying at the door with hidden stern eyebrows. Aunt Ying understood it in her mind and strode in. When I was in the palace, I saw with my own eyes that Princess Jingping was fine. Now I know that my mother-in-law is here to visit, but I am hiding on the bed. Come out, maybe you don't want to pay your respects to my mother-in-law. Grandma Ying rushed in so fast that it was too late for Lily to react and try to stop her. Queen Zhen 11's eyelids twitched heavily. How outrageous. Is this Fenji palace a place for a slave like you to run wild? Concubine Yu pretended to be flustered and walked over, but she stood in front of Queen Zhengzi and refused to get out of the way. Queen, please calm down, Queen, please calm down. Empress Zhengzi didn't want to get entangled with concubine Yu now, so she got up and walked to the back room. At the same time, Nanny Ying, who was already standing beside the bed, lifted up the bed curtain hanging on the ground. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 352. Chapter 352 The answer that is waiting to be revealed. Fan Kinjao was riding a horse and galloping all the way to the Prince of Heshuo County. At this time, the Heshuo County Prince's mansion was already in chaos. In the main courtyard, the screams of Princess Heshuo stimulated the nerves of Princess Heshuo outside the door. Not long after, the door was opened, and Dr. Li hurriedly came out. "I would like to inform Prince Heshuo that the princess has fallen into a coma. If she delays any longer, I am afraid that 1 or 2 people will die. I would like to ask the prince to make a decision." Heshuo County Prince's feet swayed, and he felt that the world was spinning in front of him. Everything was fine yesterday, so why are we separated forever today? Before Princess Heshuo fell into coma, she begged the prince to keep her child alive. Dr. Li had a guilty conscience and did not want to waste too much time. Especially today, after checking the body of Princess Heshuo, he saw that Princess Heshuo was the only one who could see Princess Heshuo. It was not as generous as he had said, and there was even more doubt and worry in my heart. The heart of Prince Heshuo was severe again. The man who faced life and death on the battlefield without blinking an eye, now had red eyes and couldn't stop crying. He naturally understands how much his wife cares about this child. But how could he watch his wife die? "Your Majesty, I still know the character of the princess's heart. Just when we were chatting, the princess said that if there was something wrong with the child in her belly, she would be the same as dead even if she was alive. Your Majesty, Princess, this is the princess's wish, can you really bear to deprive her of it?" The person who said this time was none other than Mrs. Xiao. The Prince of Heshuo County doesn't like Mrs. Xiao's flattery and hypocrisy, but she happens to be his wife's sister-in-law. The Princess of Heshuo County has only one eldest brother. It can be said that the brother and sister have had a deep relationship since they were young. In addition, the eldest brother has always been with her. She works as a salt envoy in Linjin City and is away from home all the time. The Princess of Heshuo County naturally has to take care of her eldest sister-in-law. Although Prince Heshuo didn't like Mrs. Xiao, he still listened to Mrs. Xiao's words. He knew his wife's temperament well. If his wife really said what she just said, even if he chose to save her life, she would probably be worse off than dead when she woke up. Seeing that the expression on Prince Heshuo's face had softened slightly, Mrs. Xiao cried out with all her strength, "Prince, please make a decision quickly, I'm afraid the princess won't be able to wait much longer." Prince Heshuo closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, he said, "Pass this king's orders, Bao." Little one. The last 2 words can be said to be gritting one's teeth. Physician Li secretly breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly turned around and entered the house. The boy guarding the gate of the mansion hurried over and said in a low voice, "This is to inform the prince, there is a palace visitor outside the gate asking to see you." Prince Heshuo's heart was in a mess now, and he waved his hand without thinking, "No." The young man said again, "Prince, that man said he could keep the princess, mother, and son safe." Heshuo County Prince's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly turned around and strode away towards the door. "Our wife has been pregnant for so long, and no one has ever dared to tell whether it is a boy or a girl. But now someone has directly stated that the mother and child are safe. Who else could it be but that person?" Just as Prince Heshuo was thinking about it, he saw a very expectant figure at the door. Little Kinjao. His goddaughter. Prince Heshuo naturally understood that there were many people talking, so he suppressed the joy in his heart and led Fan Kinjao through the door. He waited until he walked around the veranda in front of him before telling the truth of what Dr. Li just said. This time it was Fan Kinjao's turn to feel his heart beat hard. Concubine Yu was really ruthless. In order to sow discord between her adoptive father and the prince, she even went so far as to kill her adoptive mother. As long as the adoptive mother dies, no matter how enlightened the adoptive father is, there will still be an irreparable rift with the prince. Unknowingly, Prince Heshuo was still talking, "Then Dr. Li is from the Empress. I originally thought that the Queen's people must be reliable, but who would have thought? Sure enough, there is already a gap. Fan Kinjao knew that now was not the time to explain, and there was no way to explain this kind of thing clearly. I also asked my adoptive father to take me to the yard where my adoptive mother gave birth. It's just that my identity should not be revealed. I hope my adoptive father can help me hide it. Prince Heshuo naturally knew about the banquet held in the palace today. It was because of this that he felt that his love for his goddaughter was not in vain. Don't worry, I know what to do. Fan Kinjao nodded and followed his adoptive father toward the main courtyard without saying more. Along the way, Fan Kinjao had already imagined all the worst possibilities in his mind. Mrs. Yao was still waiting in the courtyard, wondering why Prince Heshuo left just as he said he was going to leave. As a result, she saw Prince Heshuo returning with a palace attendant. Fan Kinjao was also stunned when he saw Mrs. Yao present. Especially when I saw the gold hairpin pinned to Mrs. Yao's bun, and then I thought of my adoptive mother lying in it at the moment. The answer is already apparent. Suppressing the urge to chop Mrs. Yao into pieces and feed them to the dogs, Fan Kinjao lowered his head and hurried up the steps. Mrs. Yao subconsciously wanted to step forward and stop her. Who are you? How dare you break into the delivery room of the princess? You. Before he finished speaking, his vision went dark. She saw Prince Heshuo standing in front of her like a wall. Mrs. Yao trembled all over and said with a smile on her face, "Prince, the birth of a princess is not a child's play. How can you let such an unscrupulous outsider go in at your request?" Prince Heshuo had a gloomy face and said without changing his expression, "She is Dr. Li's medicine boy." With one sentence, Mrs. Yao was successfully silenced. The room was filled with blood. Physician Li poured the decoction in his hand into the mouth of Princess Heshuo County. Looking at the unconscious Princess Heshuo County, Dr. Li's eyes were full of guilt, but more of them were ferocious. Princess of Heshuo County, there are wrongdoers and debtors. If I want to blame you, I have to blame the queen for her chaos and abandonment. I have worked hard at the Taiyuan hospital for so many years, but I can't compare to Ji Hongliao's few words. How could Dr. Li not feel resentful when he saw that the vice president's judgment, which was at his fingertips, was actually in the hands of others? Fortunately, concubine Yu has agreed to him. As long as he completes this task, he will be the deputy judge next year. So, Princess Heshuo County, even if you are there to take revenge, remember to go find the queen. Boom dash. The closed door was suddenly knocked open. A gust of cool breeze rushed in, blowing away the strong smell of blood in the room. It was the midwives standing outside who were startled when they saw the thin figure that was covered in cold air. Who dares to enter the important maternity ward of Heshuo County Prince's palace? Just before they could ask, their consciousness began to become blurry. In the haziness, I seemed to see the thin figure walking towards the house again, but the midwives couldn't even stop them, so they fell to the ground one after another. It was Dr. Li who was standing in the back room who seemed to have noticed something was wrong. When he suddenly raised his head, he saw a figure appearing at the door. He didn't recognize that face. But the bursts of cold light shooting out of those dark eyes made him shudder. The bone-chilling chill seemed to be able to freeze everything around him instantly. Dr. Li felt as if he was in an ice cellar. Gradually, the coldness spread throughout his body and completely froze him, so that before he could even say a word, he passed out straight towards the cold. Even in a coma, Dr. Li still instinctively curled up his body and hugged his shoulders. Fan Kinjao didn't have time to see the pitiful appearance of Dr. Li, so he walked straight to his adoptive mother. He saw that there was a bowl of soup beside his adoptive mother, so he lifted it up to his nose and smelled it. The stormy waves and fierce fire steamed up in my heart. 3 taels of gold, 1.5 cents of chuanxiang, 3 cents of peach kernel, 2 cents of red peony root, plus 1 cent each of salvia milti oryza and frankincense. If used to activate blood circulation and remove blood stasis, it is the best way to dispel yin cold stagnation. But if it is used on pregnant women, this is the root cause of bleeding. Without further ado, Fan Kinjao immediately took out the silver needle bag he carried with him and placed silver needles on Princess Heshuo's temples, Yintang Ake ointment, Qingming Ake ointment, and Fengqi Ake ointment. Every time a pin dropped, the unconscious Princess Heshuo would tremble slightly. When all the silver needles fell, Princess Heshuo finally gasped and opened her eyes. Hoo-hoo, hoo-hoo. Princess Heshuo County saw the familiar furnishings in the room as if she were in a dream. When she saw that familiar face, she understood everything. Little Kinjao is here. Her goddaughter came to her rescue. Fan Kinjao had never ventured out of the palace in disguise, but he was worried that the unfamiliar face would scare his adoptive mother. Now that he saw his adoptive mother waking up, he comforted her and said softly, "It may be uncomfortable for a while. I hope my adoptive mother will feel uncomfortable, Mom. Hold on, you must vomit out all the contents in your stomach." Princess Heshuo County nodded with red eyes. Fan Kinjao took another look at the half-drinked bowl of decoction beside him. Knowing that it was too late, he hurriedly lifted up Princess Heshuo County's clothes, centered on her navel, and searched for several large acupuncture points nearby to drop silver needles. Soon, the Princess of Heshuo County felt her stomach churn for a while, and she lay beside the bed and vomited profusely. Fan Kinjao hurriedly walked around to the feet of the Princess of Heshuo County and reached out between her legs. As the vomiting became violent, Princess Heshuo's whole body was undergoing inexplicable exertion. However, the pain soon caused her to lose strength. She fell limply beside the bed, and even her breathing began to become weak. "Foster mother, hold on for the last breath. Believe me, I will be able to make your mother and son safe. Today is the day of the adoptive mother's wedding. We must not cause pain to our loved ones. Haters are quick." The Princess of Heshuo County nodded vaguely. Her consciousness had begun to blur, and what Fan Kinjao had just said echoed in her ears. Her goddaughter, she certainly believed it. In the main courtyard, Prince Heshuo's heart was in his throat. Hearing that there was no movement inside for a long time, Mrs. Xiao couldn't help crying with joy. "Oh, my miserable sister. If you really save her and leave like this, how will I explain to your brother?" Hearing these words, King Heshuo couldn't help but feel defensive. Because he always remembered what Dr. Li just said and knew his choice better. Whoa, 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 whoa. The baby's loud cry suddenly came from the silent room. Heshuo County Prince was stiff all over, not knowing whether to cry or laugh. Not long after, the closed door was pushed open, and Dr. Li, who looked a little dazed, came out. "I am reporting to Prince Heshuo that the princess was born as a young prince." Mrs. Xiao's heart was twisted with excitement, because she knew that the princess was afraid that she would die. But despite this, she rushed over, grabbed Dr. Li and pretended to cry, asking, "Where is the princess? Is the princess already?" Physician Li had no choice but to interrupt. "The princess, mother, and son are safe." The Prince Heshuo, who had no hope, was instantly overjoyed and walked directly towards the delivery room. Looking at Mrs. Xiao again. It's no exaggeration to say it was a bolt from the blue. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 353. Chapter 353, Excellent Acupuncture Skills, Making Dead Bones More Fleshy. 15 minutes ago. The confused Princess of Heshuo County gradually woke up amidst the cries of the children. She suddenly felt as if she had had a nightmare. As her eyes regained clarity, she saw her child crying with teeth and claws hanging next to her face. But the first name the Princess of Heshuo County called out was, Xiao Qinjiao. It was Fan Qinjiao who stopped the bleeding of Princess Heshuo, carefully changed the quilt, and then walked in front of the adoptive mother. There is no need to worry, the adoptive mother, the bleeding has stopped, but during this period of time, the adoptive mother has don't go to the ground again, lest you cause irreparable disease. Fan Qinjiao is really not that good looking now. Hands were already stained red with blood, hair was slightly disheveled, and even his cheeks were stained with blood. But Princess Heshuo felt so relieved when she looked at the thin figure covered in blood. It's the adoptive mother's fault, it's the adoptive mother who didn't see clearly the other people's temperaments and made random mistakes. She almost harmed you and your sisters for the rest of your life. The Princess of Heshuo County cried so much that she was trembling and suppressed. And the answer that gradually became clear in Fan Qinjiao's heart finally surfaced. My adoptive mother has just given birth, so it's not appropriate to be overjoyed or sad. I have one more thing to ask of my adoptive mother. Fan Qinjiao said and looked at Dr. Li, who was still unconscious on the ground. Since Dr. Li dared to give his adoptive mother blood-busting medicine, there was no longer any dispute about who he relied on. This time she saved her adoptive mother, but this title needs to be shouldered by Dr. Li to be the most secure. Concubine Yu was able to bribe Imperial Physician Li Ying and the Empress Dowager. She can also treat others in their own way, making Concubine Yu feel disgusted. Princess Heshuo bit her lip to hold back the guilt in her heart. She gradually thought of Dr. Li, and she understood that her own safety was not the end of this war. Fan Qinjiao carefully warned his adoptive mother, fearing to miss any details. This time out of the palace, not only does she have to be extremely careful, but she also involves the queen and Bailey Fengming. If there is a slight mistake, no matter who they are, they will escape death. The Princess of Heshuo County naturally understood this truth, but after hearing Xiao Qinjiao's words, she still couldn't help but look at Dr. Li on the ground. Is it really okay? If Fan Qinjiao interrupted directly, don't worry, stepmother, just do as I say. Hearing this, the Princess of Heshuo County could only nod her head in cooperation. Fan Qinjiao saw that the time was almost up, so he turned around and hid behind the screen. At the same time, the comatose Dr. Li and several midwives showed signs of waking up. Princess Heshuo County looked at Dr. Li, who slowly opened his eyes. She felt her heart jump into her throat, and her hands under the quilt became even more tightly clenched. Before Dr. Li and the midwife at the door could fully open their eyes, they heard the cry of the baby. The sound was clear and harsh, which made several people open their eyes. Looking at the baby that was placed beside Princess Heshuo County's bed, Dr. Li's eyes widened as if he had just woken up from a dream. This is... He seemed to feel that he lost consciousness for a moment. Otherwise, why didn't he even know when Princess Heshuo gave birth to the child? But he seemed to be awake the whole time because he couldn't feel any time passing. Mr. Li really thanks you. Thank you for saving the lives of our mother and son. People often say that doctors are like parents. Today I really saw it with my own eyes. I never thought that Dr. Li would be so excited that he fainted. Fortunately, lucky people have their own destiny. When the Princess of Heshuo County said this, tears flowed from her eyes uncontrollably, and her whole body trembled violently. It seems that I am truly grateful beyond words. Physician Li. A bolt from the blue. Physician Li looked at the Princess of Heshuo County in disbelief. Really a humble minister. The Princess of Heshuo County was extremely grateful. Of course, only Dr. Li can rejuvenate like this. Don't worry, Dr. Li, I will definitely let the prince report the matter to the emperor truthfully. The midwives standing at the door were actually in a trance. They just heard what Princess Heshuo said and had no idea what was going on. They hurriedly came in and complimented her. The sound of wonderful hands rejuvenating, and then hua tuo. It was like a hypnosis that paralyzed the nerves of Imperial Physician Li. Physician Li silently walked around to the feet of Princess Heshuo County and carefully looked at the birth wound. He felt as if he had been struck by lightning. The Princess of Heshuo County was afraid that Dr. Li might have noticed something, so she quickly spoke again, although I owe this delivery to Dr. Li, after all, there are differences between men and women. But before she could finish her words, Dr. Li nodded slightly and said, "What Princess Heshuo said is that Wei Chen will go and announce the good news to the king now. The princess and the young Prince Jiren have their own destiny, and the king it will be a great joy to know." This time it was Princess Heshuo's turn to be stunned. Is it really that simple to believe? Of course not. Fan Kinjao, who was standing behind the screen, his eyes darkened. The hemostatic needle on the adoptive mother's body has not yet been removed, and the hemostatic powder is still placed at the adoptive mother's feet. So it's not that Dr. Li was kept secret, on the contrary. It's only right to take a clear look at it. Physician Li has been able to serve his masters in the palace for so many years, and his medical skills are indispensable. So no matter how perfect her psychedelic powder is, it is impossible to hide it from Dr. Li. In this case, it would be better to lay everything out in front of him. Fan Kinjao believed that Dr. Li would definitely know how to make a decision. Physician Li, who was already standing in front of Prince Heshuo, didn't know how to make a decision, but he had to tell the truth frankly. How could he not know how ferocious the bloodletting medicine he poured into Princess Heshuo was? Especially when he saw with his own eyes the silver needle that was still stopping the bleeding of Princess Heshuo, everything became clear. It's not that he has great medical skills, but that there is a person in the palace of Heshuo County who is even more skilled than him. The acupuncture technique is outstanding, and dead bones become more fleshy. Such a person could have killed him without being seen, but he just spared his life. Although Imperial Physician Li was upset that he had not completed the instructions given by concubine Yu, he was more concerned about his own life. If he didn't even have his life, how could he talk about glory and wealth? Since the Heshuo County Prince's mansion didn't want to quarrel with each other, he might as well just go along with it. At least he lost concubine Yu, and he still had the honor of protecting the princess and the crown prince. Such an honor is enough for him to gain a foothold in front of the emperor. No matter how much concubine Yu hates her, she would not dare to take his life. Physician Li had an idea. But Mrs. Yao was struck by lightning so much that she was almost confused. If the princess of Heshuo County really saves the day, what should she do? End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 354. Chapter 354, Even if I climb up, I can drag you down. The princess of the county turned danger into safety. It must be a lucky person who has his own destiny. It's true that good people are rewarded. God has opened his eyes and allowed the princess of Heshuo County and the young prince to be safe. In the yard, Mrs. Yao suppressed her guilty conscience with joy and kept instructing the servants in the yard. One moment she went to the Hyogyo temple to worship Buddha and burn incense, and the next moment she went to scatter copper coins at the door. It seems that only in this way can the guilty conscience in the heart be hidden. Mrs. Yao understood clearly. She didn't say anything overstepping the bounds of the problem to the princess of Heshuo County. She was just telling the truth. The princess of Heshuo County had a premature birth because she couldn't bear it. Besides, she still has a son and a husband to rely on. I think Princess Heshuo would never break up with her. Thinking of this, Mrs. Yao even instructed the maids in front of her and said, "Hurry up and write a post to send the good news to the mansion who is familiar with Princess Heshuo County." In the yard, Mrs. Yao was busy and happy. In the room, Princess Heshuo was filled with disgust when she heard his voice. But Mrs. Yao was right about one thing. Even for her brother and nephew, she was unwilling to break up with her only sister-in-law. Otherwise, wouldn't it hurt her brother's heart? Does the adoptive mother really think that Mrs. Xiao's courage alone dares to stimulate the adoptive mother? Don't forget, the adoptive mother, Mrs. Xiao, has also given birth to a child. Naturally, she knows better than others the consequences of stimulating a pregnant woman. The consequences. Fan Qingjie walked out of the screen and gently pulled out the hemostatic needle. Princess Heshuo County's heart skipped a beat. Xiao Qingjie, what do you mean? In total, it has been a few days since Mrs. Xiao and Xiao Hongfei left the Hua family. If Mrs. Xiao really feels that it is unfair, or wants to find help from her adoptive mother to vent her anger, she should come and give her the news immediately, and not specifically today when I enter the palace without any skills. Even if his adoptive mother didn't say anything, Fan Qingjie knew exactly what Mrs. Xiao said. I'm afraid Mrs. Xiao not only told her adoptive mother everything that happened at Hua's house that day, but she also made it clear about all the dirty things she had done. To put it bluntly, Xiao Hongfei is just a 6th grade attendant. If he hadn't relied on his adoptive mother, how could he have been cared for by the officials in the court? But Madame Xiao just ignored her adoptive mother's ideas. He took the initiative to confess everything to his adoptive mother, even at the cost of breaking his face. Fan Qingjie's words did not fully explain it, but the princess of Heshuo County fully understood it. No wonder her sister-in-law barged in today and said so bluntly that Xiao Hongfei and Xiao Qingjie were inappropriate. No wonder she made it clear that she looked down on Xiao Hongfei's marriage to the Hua family and ridiculed the Hua family for not being worthy of the Xiao family. What's more, Mrs. Xiao personally told the princess of Heshuo County that in order to stop Xiao Hongfei from thinking, she did not hesitate to bribe people to slander the daughter of the Hua family. Originally, the princess of Heshuo County only blamed Mrs. Xiao for being so ambitious. But now, Princess Heshuo's heart was already chilling to her bones. Because her sister-in-law came today with the intention of killing her. I really didn't expect that. I had carefully taken care of their mother and child for more than 10 years, but in the end I got such a result. Princess Heshuo's face also tightened. Fan Qingjie squinted his eyes slightly and looked through the window at the dazzling golden hairpin on Mrs. Xiao's bun in the yard. Mrs. Xiao's family has indeed climbed a high tree, otherwise she would not have dared to fall out with her adoptive mother. It's a pity that this high branch is destined to be unstable. Even if Mrs. Xiao can really stand firm, Fan Qingjie has 10,000 ways to make her fall down hard. The Prince of Heshuo County, who happened to come to congratulate his wife at this time, heard these words. The joy that originally filled my heart was instantly replaced by anger. Prince Heshuo looked at Mrs. Xiao, who was still giving instructions to her servants in the yard, and turned around to go out. Princess Heshuo quickly spoke to stop her. Prince, please be patient. She is my sister-in-law. If anything happens in our mansion, I'm afraid it will be a joke to outsiders. Heshuo County Prince was very angry. Should we just let that old godly woman keep her publicity? Fan Qingjie looked at his adoptive mother looking after the overall situation, and a layer of coldness filled his brows. It is indeed difficult to cause trouble when there are relatives, but if there is no relationship anymore, even if others are laughing, they are just looking at the Xiao family. It's just a madam. The princess of Heshuo County was suddenly startled. Although he still felt guilty about his brother, he nodded firmly. Fan Qingjie looked at Prince Heshuo again. I have something to trouble my adoptive father. I hope my adoptive father can take off the golden hairpin from Mrs. Xiao's head. It is best not to let Mrs. Xiao notice it. Heshuo County Prince thought it was something difficult. After hearing Fan Qingjie's words, he turned around and walked out the door. In the yard, Mrs. Xiao ordered the servants, "What are you doing here? Hurry up and wait for someone at the door. Otherwise, when the official wives come to congratulate you, no one will greet you." Wouldn't it be a joke? Given her status as the princess of Heshuo County, I am afraid that all those who come to congratulate her are famous ladies from the main city. In this way, She can also take the opportunity to make friends with some powerful people that she would never be able to reach on ordinary days. Mrs. Xiao was just thinking about beauty when she saw a dark shadow coming from behind. Mrs. Xiao turned around in shock and saw Prince Heshuo standing behind her. The prince does not need to worry about the matters in the palace, just leave it to me. Before he finished speaking, Prince Heshuo kicked him over. Mrs. Xiao, who had no defense at all, was knocked over 1 meter away. In the room, Fan Qinjiao looked at the scene and was really ashamed. As expected, those who lead troops to fight go straight to the point. Mrs. Xiao, whose eyes were so painful that they had stars popping out, covered her chest with severe pain. She understood what was going on in her heart and hurriedly said, "The prince can't treat me like this. I am the sister-in-law of the princess. If something really happens to me, what should Xiao Hongfei do? My husband will definitely be worried about it." At this time, he did not forget to use his son and husband as shields. Hoshuo Junwang's fists made a clucking sound. Seeing Prince Heshuo standing still, Mrs. Xiao knew that her words had an effect, and she felt happy and proud. Looking at the house not far away again, the joy of the villain's success has already replaced the fear just now. She is the sister-in-law of the princess of Heshuo County. It will not look good on anyone's face if there is a fight. Kui Lian. The voice of Princess Heshuo rang in the room. A maid hurriedly walked in and came out after a while holding a letter. Mrs. Xiao's eyes were so sharp that she saw her husband's name written on the letter at a glance. Before Mrs. Xiao could react, she heard the voice of Princess Heshuo again in the room. "I will tell my brother frankly about what happened today, and I will personally apologize to my brother when he returns to the main city." Mrs. Xiao's heart froze, and her intuition told her that something was beyond her expectation. The next words of the Princess of Heshuo County completely pushed her into the endless abyss. "Both my mother and son almost died in death because of you. This matter no longer requires my brother's consent, so I will divorce you first. Get out of my Xiao family." Mrs. Xiao. Princess, you can't treat me like this. I have worked hard to pull Hongfei over these years without any credit, so how can you divorce me with just one word? I don't accept it, I don't accept it. If you are dissatisfied, you can appeal at will. But if this matter gets serious, not only will your head be in danger, but even Xiao Hongfei's career will be implicated. Luz Hilian, you should carefully consider the pros and cons before making a decision. It's not too late. Mrs. Xiao was lying on the ground, feeling her eyes getting dark. Prince Heshuo, however, was too lazy to look at Mrs. Xiao's lifeless look, and immediately ordered her to be thrown out. Picking up the gold hairpin that fell from Mrs. Xiao's head and falling to the ground, Prince Heshuo turned around and returned to the house. Fan Qinjiao looked at the golden hairpin and pushed it back into the hands of Prince Heshuo. This golden hairpin is exquisitely made and inlaid with pearls. No matter how rich Mrs. Xiao is, how can she buy such a valuable thing? Fortunately, if mother and son are well, the adoptive father will always go to the palace to report the good news. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 355. Chapter 355, Give me a good beating. Heshuo County Prince listened carefully to Fan Qinjiao's words, and the anger in his chest began to grow again. If Xiao Qinjiao hadn't reminded him, he wouldn't have noticed it. "Don't worry, I know what to do." Fan Qinjiao nodded, thinking that there was still a lot of things going on in the palace, so he didn't want to stay any longer. Under the personal of Prince Heshuo, Fan Qinjiao went out directly from the back door and got into the carriage. As the carriage slowly drove away from the Heshuo County Prince's mansion, Fan Qinjiao did not breathe a sigh of relief. In this matter, concubine Yu really wanted to use her adoptive mother to provoke a discord between her adoptive father and Bailey Fengming. Fan Qinjiao, who has been a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law for a lifetime, knows concubine Yu too well. Ruthless and ruthless, unscrupulous. With the method of pleasing the imperial concubine, since it caused such a big commotion, it was definitely not just for this reason. Fan Kinjao looked at the palace standing in the distance through the car window and narrowed his eyes slightly. I'm afraid that at this time, concubine Yu has already seen the rich gift she prepared. Fan Kinjao was right, there was indeed no rest in the palace. Concubine Yu, who was standing in Fenji Palace at the moment, looked at the so-called generous gift in shock, but she couldn't recover for a long time. Grandma Ying, who lifted the bed curtain, was also startled, her face turned pale. But I saw the person lying on the bed, his face was like gold paper, his energy was unstable, his eyes were tightly closed, and his brows were furrowed. Looking like this, he was indeed frightened and unconscious. Yes, but this face. How come this face belonging to Fan Kinjao appears here? Concubine Yu frowned and glared questioningly at Aunt Ying, who was not far away. Didn't she say that Fan Kinjao had left the palace? Grandma Ying also looked like she had seen a ghost, and she didn't know how to answer or explain at all. Concubine Yu was speechless, but Empress Zhengzi already had something to say. What does Concubine Yu want to do? Do you really think that because you are so favored, you can do whatever you want? If Concubine Yu can't give me an explanation for what happened today, I will ask the Emperor to make the decision. Fenji Palace is not a place for Concubine Yu to run wild as she pleases. Such a fierce Queen Zhen 11 frightened Aunt Ying. The Queen, please calm down, it's all my fault, it's the old slave who wrongly blamed Princess Jingping, please don't blame my wife, I'm willing to bear all the punishment. Grandma Ying knelt on the ground and kowtowed her head. She still has a way to survive if she can keep her master, otherwise she is just afraid. Queen Zhen 11 seemed to be angry and laughed. I have long heard that Grandma Ying is loyal to the Lord. When I saw her today, I was really moved. In this case, I will punish you with 15 with the cane. Lily, take me with you, let Aunt Ying go and receive the punishment. Is a penalty of 15 with a stick considered a mercy? If you don't show mercy, why don't you beat the person to death? Concubine Yu couldn't help but want to step forward to argue, but Aunt Ying hugged her leg. Mother, I really can't do anything else at this time. Concubine Yu tensed her body, the anger in her heart burning down to her hair. Empress Zhen 11 said without changing her expression, Concubine Yu is unwilling to train such a lawless slave, so I will pretend to be a bad guy and help Concubine Yu train her. Lily, drag him outside the door and beat him in Fenji Palace. Over the years, she has endured every step of the way for the sake of her son, and Concubine Yu has become more and more unscrupulous in climbing on top of her head. Now that Feng Ming is fully capable of taking charge of her own business, why should she look at anyone else's face? The palace attendants in Fenji Palace pushed Grandma Ying down on the bench and picked up the board without saying a word. The dull sound of the board made all the official ladies in the side hall look around in alarm. It was a small thing for Grandma Ying to be beaten, but it was a big thing for Concubine Yu to lose her face. Who among the people inside and outside the palace doesn't know that Aunt Ying is a popular person in front of Concubine Yu, and now she is being beaten up in public in Fenji Palace? Even if Concubine Yu's clothes are stripped off, what's the difference? The official ladies standing at the window were all frightened when they saw it, and they didn't dare to express their anger. Concubine Yu took a strong breath, her eyes turning black. Today she is completely embarrassed. I am afraid that within a few moments, the news that she was crushed by the queen will spread. Concubine Yu, who has always been arrogant, could not bear the thought of the dictation of those people inside and outside the palace. But even if you can't bear it, you have to bear it. Since Queen Zhen 11 has achieved this step, she has no intention of leaving any room. The best thing to do is to bring this matter to the emperor. No matter how partial the emperor is, he will not favor a slave. Concubine Yu looked at the queen's unmoving appearance, and her eyes became darker. A palace servant carefully supported Concubine Yu and said something in a lower voice. Concubine Yu, who was almost mad to death, was stunned. The palace man stopped talking and only supported Concubine Yu carefully. Concubine Yu's ears were still echoing with the words of the palace people around her, and gradually, her breathing became calmer. Go and call the third prince over, and tell him that I am waiting for him at Longian Hall. The palace servant nodded and helped Concubine Yu turn around. Lily looked at Concubine Yu, who left in embarrassment, and frowned uneasily. Concubine Yu is not someone who gives up easily. Empress Gen 11 calmly warned, you stay here and watch them torture you. You can't miss more than half of the 15 big boards. Lily lowered her eyes tacitly, and then ordered the maids beside her, it's cold outside, and it's not suitable for the queen's body to be blown by too much cold wind. Please help the queen to rest inside. Empress Gen 11 entered the door with the help of a palace maid, but sent the 2 palace ladies out when no one was around. When the footsteps completely disappeared in the dormitory, she quickly walked back to the inner hall. Concubine Yu left, but she didn't look like she was complaining. Could it be that she saw something wrong with Niduan? Queen Gen 11 looked at Fan Kinjao on the bed and frowned. It was Fan Kinjao who closed his eyes and slowly opened them. It's just that at this moment, the eyes that should have been indifferent and distant are filled with an unfamiliar depth and tranquility. Even if Concubine Yu guesses the truth, she can't ask her father to go to the East Palace. Once her idea is wrong, she will definitely make a fool of herself in front of her father. Now is the critical time for the prince of the right age to marry. Concubine Yu, she doesn't dare to displease her father, so she can't afford to gamble. Fan Kinjao's face showed Bailey Fengming's calm expression. Empress Gen 11 did not feel it was inappropriate, because she knew from the beginning that the person lying here was just her son who had been disguised. I just didn't expect that Xiao Kinjao's disguise was so good. The moment Grandma Ying lifted the bed curtain, she thought it was Xiao Kinjao who was lying here. Since it's not a complaint. Queen Gen 11 seemed to have thought of something. Could it be? Bailey Fengming's dark eyes darkened again. Father is the Emperor of Ziliang, and any violation in the palace will be investigated and dealt with strictly. What's more, today I fell into the water. In the yard, suddenly another strange smell came in. Bailey Fengming quickly lowered his hand that was supporting the bed curtain. As the bed curtains fell to the ground, a large group of guards walked in from the door. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 356. Chapter 356. The Emperor summons everyone to go. Empress Zhengzi turned around and regained her usual restrained majesty. The leader of the guards took a step forward and knelt on the ground. The Emperor has an order to summon the Empress, Princess Jingping and all the officials ladies to go to Longian Palace quickly. Queen Gen 11 asked calmly, the Emperor is not resting, so why bother at this time? The commander of the guards did not answer, but paused. The other princes and ladies are already waiting at Longian Hall. Queen Gen 11's heart sank, but she waved her hands calmly on her face. I know, please go down. The commander of the guards had no intention of leaving. Empress Zhengzi's heart became even heavier. It seems that the worries in my heart have come true after all. Whatever you are afraid of will come to you. Lily followed the sound and walked in. She looked at the commander of the guards very forcefully and said, even if the Emperor summons me again, the Empress must change her clothes first. If the Empress offends the Emperor with such an undignified appearance, I dare to ask Commander Zhou. Can you afford it? Hearing this, the commander of the guards had to back down. It's because I was negligent. Please hurry up, the Queen. The Emperor is in a hurry. After saying that, he led the guards behind him out of the palace. Seeing this, Lily hurriedly closed the door of the palace. Queen Zhen 11 quickly walked to the bed and said to Bailey Fengming inside, "I will go and delay the fight with them first, but you should also be faster. Since the emperor has even called the other princes and concubines, her son will not be missing. It can be said that Xiao Qinjiao is still in a coma, but Bailey Fengming, the prince, must not miss the occasion." "Don't worry, mother, I know what to do." Inside the bed curtain, Bailey Fengming also sat up. Empress Zhen 11 stopped inking, turned around and walked back to the middle hall. Lily came over in a hurry, full of worry. "Your Majesty is gathering everyone together at this time, for fear that something will happen. I'm afraid it's not the emperor who wants to cause trouble, but some people who don't want to bring peace to this palace. But no matter what, the worst is to break up and no one will be able to get over it." Empress Zhen 11's face was filled with emotion. A hint of harshness. Lily became even more nervous after hearing this. When the ladies from the official family who came to the palace to attend the banquet heard the emperor's summons, no one dared to delay. They hurriedly put on their makeup, and were led out of Fenji Palace in a row under the guidance of the palace officials. In the Longian Hall, the seats have been set up by the palace attendants. Emperor Yongchang was sitting on the throne, his face extremely gloomy. Yuning stood respectfully behind the throne, carefully massaging Emperor Yongchang's temples. The other princes had already arrived and were sitting on both sides with the concubines in the palace. It is said that we are sitting, but everyone's heart is very nervous. When the official ladies arrived, they were also shocked by the dull and depressing atmosphere in the palace. They did not even dare to lift more, and were assigned to chairs far away by the palace officials. Han Jingchen quietly looked into the crowd worriedly, but could not find Fan Qinjiao. Since this matter has been confirmed, the emperor will definitely investigate it strictly. He dares to attack everyone in public, and he does not take the life of the emperor in his eyes. It is simply hateful. Concubine Panda's voice suddenly sounded, so serious that everyone in the hall fell silent. Concubine Yu's face turned pale, and she looked at the emperor who was not far away with worried eyes. Concubine Panda is right, people who intend to murder the emperor must not be allowed to go unpunished. Concubine Panda wanted her niece to marry the prince. She wants to help the prince speak. Concubine Yu, don't rush to express your position like this. Although the third prince has found out the problem, he has not found any evidence. Without evidence, everyone is suspect. Concubine Yu glanced at Concubine Panda inadvertently. Since the emperor has called everyone here, there is naturally evidence. Why is Concubine Panda so anxious? Could it be that she has a guilty conscience? Concubine Panda secretly said something bad. The competition between the third prince and the prince is no longer a day or two. Could it be? Just when Concubine Panda wanted to say a few more words for the prince, she heard Queen Zhengxi's voice coming from outside the door. "They are getting more and more wanton. How can it be inappropriate to quarrel like this in front of the emperor?" Concubine Panda quickly closed her mouth when she saw Queen Zhen 11 coming slowly. Concubine Yu did not want to be dwarfed and said, "It's just a discussion. Doesn't the queen have the qualifications to let us harem sisters even speak now?" Queen Zhen 11 stood in front of the emperor and glanced at Concubine Yu calmly. "No one has blocked Concubine Yu's mouth, right? I just hope that Concubine Yu will think carefully before speaking, otherwise she will offend you. It would be bad if the servants of the palace also learned to be reckless." Concubine Yu. "I had just forgotten about Grandma Ying being beaten, but suddenly I remembered it again." Queen Zhengxi walked to sit down next to Emperor Yongchang, and inadvertently glanced at Yuning's face behind her. Even if it was just a short glance, Yuning's face turned pale with fright. Is this the majesty of the master of the harem? The official ladies in the distance were dumbfounded and frightened. Emperor Yongchang frowned slightly, looked at the queen beside him and said displeasedly, "The queen's temper is getting worse." Empress Zhen 11's premonition became even stronger, but she said calmly, "What the emperor taught me is that I just blame myself too much. If I could have personally supervised the preparations for the palace earlier, I would not have let the emperor fall into the water. Emperor Yongchang looked at the queen beside him silently again, then looked back at the third prince and said, "Tell me the results of your investigation." Bailey Rongs quickly stood up and knelt respectfully in front of the emperor and the queen. "I would like to inform my father, the emperor, my mother, and my son. I personally inspected the ships in the palace with all the princes, and found that the cleaning plugs under the ships were all used by others. Unplug, because the cleaning pegs on the bottom of the two boats are connected by an iron chain, so as long as one boat's cleaning peg falls, the other boat's cleaning peg will also be pulled out. Everyone present is familiar with cleaning plugs." So as Bailey Rongs finished speaking, the expressions of everyone present changed several times. The cleaning plugs are always in the forward position under the boats, and just in front of the two boats, apart from the emperor and the queen, is where the concubines in the brothers' palace are closest. The concubines never expected that not only would they almost get involved in a play with them, but now they would actually become a target of suspicion. Some timid concubines have already knelt on the ground and sworn oaths to prove their innocence. "Your Majesty, how could this concubine do such a thing? Your Majesty, I swear to God that I will never do anything to harm the dragon's body." Concubine Yu looked at the panicked concubines kneeling on the ground and frowned suspiciously. Emperor Yongchang looked at Concubine Yu and said, "What do you want to say, Concubine Yu?" Concubine Yu got up hurriedly and knelt on the ground along with the other concubines. "I just suddenly remembered that it seems that the concubines from various palaces are not the only ones sitting on the bow of the boat. Who else could it be, not just the concubines of the harem?" Soon, two figures appeared in front of everyone's eyes. How could they have forgotten that there were two other people who had the honor of sitting on the bow of the boat together? One is Pan Yulu. The other one is Princess Jingping. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 357. Who is Chapter 357 directed at? Pan Yu faced the looks of the official ladies and was so frightened that she fell off her chair. The heavy sound shocked Pan Di so much that her heart skipped a beat. "Your Majesty, Yulu has been a pure-hearted person since she was a child. She is reluctant to trample an ant to death. How could she do such a treasonous thing? Your Majesty must learn from this." Concubine Panda knelt on the ground, so anxious that she even fell down. Cried. Pan Yula was so frightened that she lay on the ground in a panic, unable to even speak. Emperor Yongchang's face was expressionless, and it was impossible to tell whether he was happy or angry. He looked at Pan Yula carefully for a long time, and then asked in a deep voice, "Where is Princess Jingping?" Empress Zhen 11 squeezed her hands tightly under her sleeves, but said with a slight sullen look on her face, "I want to say that Princess Jingping is really useless. I only asked her a few questions, and she fainted. On the ground, he is still unconscious in Fenji Palace. The man of the Hua family is upright, how can he raise such a useless person?" Emperor Yongchang looked at Queen Zhengzi beside him. "You said Princess Jingping is unconscious." Queen Zhen 11's question was not answered. Just now, Concubine Yu was also in Fenji Palace. Upon hearing this, Emperor Yongchang turned his attention to Concubine Yu again. Concubine Yu was very angry. The queen simply made it clear that she was asked to be a witness. But even though she was so angry that she wanted to bite off a piece of meat from the queen's body, Concubine Yu could only be willing to be the scapegoat. "What the queen said is that I did see the unconscious Princess Jingping, and I didn't," she said. "Thinking about it, everyone fell into the water. How could Princess Jingping be so weak?" Emperor Yongchang's eyes darkened. Cough cough cough, cough cough cough. A rapid coughing sound came from the door. Everyone followed the sound and saw the prince, who had already changed his clothes, walking in with the support of Lian 11. Everyone in the palace just fell into the water, and then the prince was carried away by the palace officials. The lady of the official family did not have time to take a closer look. Now she saw the prince in a white robe and a handsome face slowly walking over. The official family who was sitting here. There is no young lady whose heart beats like spring. There are indeed no ugly people in the royal family. Even the princes present are all handsome and handsome. But compared with the belated arrival of the current prince, he is still somewhat inferior. Bailey Fengming entered the main hall against the gaze of everyone, and knelt down in front of Emperor Yongchang a little weakly. I am late, please forgive me. The prince's health has not been very good since he was a child. Emperor Yongchang was too lazy to care and waved his hand. Get up. Bailey Fengming wanted to stand up without hesitation. Lian 11, who was beside him, seemed to have thought of something, and pulled His Highness's sleeve. Your Highness, the judge of the Imperial Academy. Bailey Fengming frowned slightly and reprimanded in a low voice rather impatiently, there is no room for you to speak here. Lian 11 felt aggrieved after being scolded, but he did not dare to speak again. Concubine Yu didn't know what kind of trick the prince was trying to play, but she didn't want to let the prince continue. Since the emperor said. Before she could finish her words, Queen Zhen 11 interrupted her, don't be so impudent. How could you whisper so unruly in front of the emperor? Why don't the prince apologize to the emperor as soon as possible? Emperor Yongchang didn't have much intention to care about what the prince was whispering to the eunuchs around him, but after hearing what the queen said and knowing the queen's good intentions, he could only patiently focus on the prince again. Bailey Fengming knelt on the ground again in fear. Father, please calm down. The judge of the Ji Yuan just asked his son to send a message to his mother. He said that Princess Jingping did not understand the nature of water, so there was a lot of water in her chest. Please send her a message. Princess Jingping was asked to lie on her side to prevent the water from choking her heart and lungs. Emperor Yongchang frowned slightly. He didn't know that Fan Qinjiao didn't know the nature of water. If it is true as Ji Hongliao said, then Fan Qinjiao's suspicion will be. The hand pressing on the temple suddenly stopped trembling. Before Emperor Yongchang could speak, Yuning, who had just been standing behind him, came around to him, kneeling on the ground and apologizing in fear. It was my servant who was careless. Your Majesty, please calm down. Yuning's little face was so pale that her whole body was kneeling on the ground, trembling constantly. Seeing this, Emperor Yongchang raised his hand in the air and paused. Yuning, what are you hiding from me? Yuning knelt on the ground with her head lowered, biting her lip and not daring to speak. Emperor Yongchang's eyes darkened. Yuning, what did you see? Yuning seemed to have been spoken to in her heart, and her whole body trembled even more. The air conditioning around Emperor Yongchang increased a lot, and even Bai Tu, who was standing aside, was on tenterhooks. Queen Zhengzi looked at Yuning kneeling on the ground, and then looked calmly at concubine Yu beside her. Yuning has already caught the emperor's attention, and there is no need to be a standout at this time. But now Yuning pretended to be nervous and knelt in front of the emperor, unable to speak. Did concubine Yu and Yuning plan to frame the prince from the beginning? Empress Zhengzi's breath also sank. Bailey Fengming looked at his mother's worried eyes and lowered his eyes slightly to cover the thoughts in his eyes. Everyone in the palace can prove that he does not understand the nature of water. Even if his father believed concubine Yu's words, he only doubted him. Since it is suspicion, there will be no so-called punishment. Even if he really falls out of favor for a while, he can only find an opportunity to prove his loyalty to his father afterwards. As for concubine Yu, she did not get any benefits. How could concubine Yu not understand such pros and cons? Emperor Yongchang, who had been looking at Yuning, spoke again. Yuning, if you want to say anything, feel free to say it. With me protecting you, no one can hurt you at all. Bailey Fengming looked at concubine Yu's quietly raised red lips again, and felt a shiver in her heart. Could it be? At the same time, Yuning, who was kneeling on the ground, said cautiously, Your Majesty, Before I jumped into the lake, I saw a figure unplugging the boat bolt, because it was too far away. I didn't see her appearance, I just remembered that she was wearing a blue dress. The word dress hit Queen Gen 11's ears hard. She squeezed the armrest beside her uneasily, never expecting that these people were coming for Xiao Qinjiao. Bailey Fengming still lowered his eyes, with a sharp flash like a knife in his eyes. As expected, concubine Yu had been Ayao's idea from the beginning. The official ladies in the distance started to make a commotion. Emperor Yangchang's face had completely darkened. He looked at Bai Tu beside him and said, "Bring all the people wearing blue clothes to me." Bai Tu nodded and hurriedly walked towards the direction where the official lady was sitting. Not long after, several official ladies in blue clothes were held down by the guards and knelt down in front of Emperor Yangchang. However, Emperor Yangchang didn't even look at concubine Pandafai. He just reached out and pulled up Yuning in front of him, and asked slowly and softly, "Take a good look and see if there is the one you mentioned among these people." Yuning turned around obediently and looked at the official ladies kneeling on the ground. Feeling Yuning's gaze, several official ladies felt that their hearts were about to jump out of their throats. After a long while, Yuning finally looked away from the few people, turned to Emperor Yangchang and whispered softly, "Your Majesty, when I stood on the shore, I didn't see that person's face carefully, but I could see it. Clearly, that person's entire dress is blue." Emperor Yangchang looked at Bai Tu and said, "Look for it again." Bai Tu didn't dare to delay, and walked in the direction of other official ladies. Even though Queen Gen 11 was still sitting on the chair too calmly, she was already breaking into a cold sweat. Before leaving the palace, Xiao Qinjiao specially gave her a change of clothes, so how could she forget that the color of the clothes was cyan? "I'm afraid concubine Yu won't give up until she finds out Xiao Qinjiao." The hands under Bailey Fengming's sleeves were clenched into fists. He had discerned the purpose of concubine Yu far earlier than Queen Gen 11, but at this moment, he was kneeling in front of his father, but he could not say a word for Ayao. Otherwise, all his efforts will be in vain. Bailey Fengming is not afraid of losing the opportunity to sit on that chair. He was just afraid that he would never be able to hold Ayao's hand again. Not long after, Bai Tu returned to Emperor Yangchang and said, "To inform the emperor, the other ladies do not have the characteristics Yuning said." Emperor Yangchang knew very well that slaves like Yuning who wanted to be favored were actually the most loyal. So Emperor Yangchang believed Yuning's words from the bottom of his heart. But today's official ladies are all sitting here, but they don't have the characteristics Yuning mentioned. Could it be? Did Yuning see it wrong? Concubine Yu seemed to look at Emperor Yangchang casually. It is reasonable to think that something happened suddenly. Not everyone is like Princess Jingping, who is calm in times of crisis. Even if she is facing the divorce of her parents, she can still do it so calm and composed. The intention of these words pointing to Fan Qinjiao should not be too obvious. Empress Gen 11 looked sulky and said, "So I said that Princess Jingping was just a showman." At the critical moment, she couldn't even bear the slightest storm. "I'm afraid she is still unconscious in Fenji Palace." Concubine Yu looked at Queen Gen 11 with a half smile. "It doesn't matter even if she is unconscious. Anyway, the emperor is looking for blue clothes now, so what does it matter if Princess Jingping is unconscious?" Empress Gen 11 frowned slightly. "I just saw concubine Yu caring so much about Princess Jingping. I thought that concubine Yu wanted the third prince to marry Princess Jingping and become the third prince's concubine. How come she is just changing her attitude now? Has she changed her face? Or does concubine Yu have other intentions from the beginning?" Concubine Yu's expression changed slightly when Queen Gen 11 poked at her. Looking at Bailey Rongs, who was sitting among the princes not far away, his face was indeed very blue. If the matter had not reached such a stage, he would not have known that his mother-in-law was actually going towards Fan Qinjiao. He has already told his mother-in-law that Fan Qinjiao is a destined phoenix, and also explained the Tao family's medical code for immortality. His mother-in-law also agreed to help him marry Fan Kinjao. Why did you change your mind? Those who plot to harm the emperor must be punished by the 9 tribes. Bailey Rongs looked at his mother and concubine in disbelief. Did the mother-in-law want to kill Fan Kinjao from the very beginning? Concubine Yu was aware of her son's gaze, but now she didn't care at all. Empress Zhen 11 looked at concubine Yu, who was steadfast in her vows, and knew that it was irreversible that the emperor sent people to find Xiao Kinjao. What she can do now is delay the time. Concubine Yu really spoke righteously, as if she had seen something with her own eyes. Concubine Yu frowned when she saw the queen's reaction. Of course she knew that the queen did not really hate Fan Kinjao, but now she was delaying time so openly. A line of sight suddenly looked towards concubine Yu. With their eyes facing each other, concubine Yu clearly saw 4 words from the man's mouth. Replace plums with peaches. Concubine Yu's heart skipped a beat. If Fan Kinjao really leaves the palace privately, and then finds someone to lie in disguise in Fenji Palace, and that person is someone who can completely keep the matter secret. Prince. I really didn't see anything, but I seemed to see that the clothes Princess Jingping was wearing were also blue. So when I heard what the maid next to the queen said just now, I wanted to quickly let Princess Jingping prove her innocence. If this matter has nothing to do with Princess Jingping, I will be happy, but if this matter really has to do with Princess Jingping. Concubine Yu seemed to be speaking to the queen, but in fact the person she was looking at was the emperor. Emperor Yongchang was still concerned about concubine Yu's attempt to win over Fan Kinjao secretly. Now, listening to concubine Yu's words, he was a little moved, but more of he was suspicious. I have to say that Fan Kinjao is indeed the person who has the most motives against him among all the people. Queen Zhen 11 looked at the emperor's eyes that were gradually sinking, and her hands in her sleeves were clenched until they turned white. However, no one can stop the emperor's order now. Come here. Bring Princess Jingping to me, no matter what method you use. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 358. Chapter 358, Turning Against Each Other? The so-called no matter what method is used. Even if he is unconscious, he still has to be carried over. As the emperor's voice fell, Bai Tu had already led the guards out of Longjian Hall. Concubine Yu looked proudly at Queen Zhen 11, who was sitting not far away. The evidence of this crime all points to Fan Kinjao. Even if Fan Kinjao has great abilities, he will still be doomed. Furthermore, the prince pretending to be Fan Kinjao is kneeling here now. I am afraid that not even Fan Kinjao can be seen in Fenji Palace. This is better. As long as Fan Kinjao is not in the palace, he has committed the crime of absconding in fear of crime. It's just a pity, the queen is really good at pretending, and she can still remain calm even when death is imminent. Concubine Yu looked away from Queen Zhen 11's face. Even though Queen Zhengzi is already beating drums in her heart, she still looks calm on her face. Having been living in this harem for decades, if she didn't even have these skills, she would have died 1,000 times long ago. Only. Empress Zhen 11 looked at Bailey Fengming, who was still kneeling on the ground rather uneasily. If Xiao Kinjao is really doomed, Fengming, how should you choose? Bailey Fengming unconsciously raised his lips and smiled lightly. When it came to Ayao, he never wanted to make a choice. Because no matter what kind of road it is, he will always walk with her. A quarter of an hour later, the sound of chaotic footsteps was heard outside the silent hall. Everyone is nervous. Han Jingchen was so nervous that she began to have trouble breathing. Of course she didn't want it to be Fan Kinjao's, but since she had been with Fan Kinjao today, she was very sure that Fan Kinjao's clothes were blue. As the sound of footsteps spread from outside to inside the door, the princess followed suit unconsciously. Concubine Yu already knew the answer in her heart, and she even glanced at it. Whether you look at it or not, Fan Kinjao today is destined to My daughter Fan Kinjao comes to see your majesty, the queen. A familiar voice suddenly sounded, unusually clear in the silent Longian hall. Concubine Yu, who was secretly proud just now, looked at the figure slowly kneeling on the ground in disbelief, thinking that she had seen something wrong. Fan Kinjao? How can it be? Logically speaking, since Fan Kinjao left the palace, he must have gone to the Prince Heshuo palace. Even now, there has been no news from Imperial Physician Li. It is obvious that the life or death of Princess Heshuo is still uncertain. Yes, why did Fan Kinjao return to the palace early? Even if someone really tipped Fan Kinjao, it would never be so fast. Concubine Yu's face became tense in an unpredictable way, and her whole body was inexplicably restless. Queen Zhen 11 looked at Fan Kinjao not far away, and couldn't tell whether she was happy or worried. Happily, her delay was not in vain. Xiao Kinjao rushed back in time. What worries me is that the clothes are still the worst. Fan Kinjao glanced out of the corner of his eye and saw the worry in Queen Zhen 11's eyes, and he was relieved. As soon as she entered the palace, she met Lily waiting at the door, and then she heard about the current situation in the palace. Originally, Lily alone would never be able to achieve such a seamless result. Fan Kinjao has even thought of using drugs to control the guards who go to Fenji Palace. Although it is a bit risky and troublesome, it is always better than being completely exposed. But it happened that that person came to help. It was precisely because of this that she realized that the person was actually from Bailey Fengming. No wonder Bailey Fengming was able to master the imperial news so quickly and meticulously. Now, Bailey Fengming was kneeling beside her. Although she couldn't look sideways, smelling the scent slowly spreading from his body was enough to reassure her. Emperor Yongchang looked at Fan Kinjao's clothes. Is this what you wore when you entered the palace today? Fan Kinjao said truthfully, my daughter fell unconscious when she arrived at Fenji Palace, and she didn't know who changed her clothes. Take off the clothes of the maid. Queen Zhen 11 explained, that's true. I was afraid that Princess Jingping would be exposed to the cold in Fenji Palace, so I asked the palace maid to change her clothes. I was busy with the things in front of me just now, but this matter was forgotten. Hearing this, the surrounding concubines all felt a cold sweat for the queen. Obviously, Princess Jingping is trying to embarrass and betray the queen. But now under such strict investigation by the emperor, not to mention the queen's disdain for Princess Jingping, even if she really wanted to help, she did not dare to destroy the evidence. Under the thoughtful gaze of all the concubines, Queen Zhen 11 was suspicious but did not doubt Fan Kinjao. If these words were spoken by someone else, they would naturally want to shift all the responsibility to her. Or perhaps he wanted her to deal with the clothes in private. But Queen Zhengzi believed that Fan Kinjao would never do such a thing. Queen, it's true that noble people tend to forget things. How can such an important thing be forgotten so easily? Concubine Yu stared at Queen Zhen 11, her charming eyes as if they were quenched with poison. Even if Fan Kinjao is kneeling here now, Concubine Yu is sure that the person who was in Fenji Palace just now is definitely not Fan Kinjao. But it's too late to say this now. Fortunately, I still have clothes to prove it. No matter whether Fan Kinjao confessed on his own initiative or secretly disposed of the clothes, he was destined to die. And once Fan Kinjao dies, the queen will definitely be implicated. Emperor Yongchang looked slightly at Queen Zhengzi beside him. Where are your clothes now? Empress Zhen 11's face paused slightly, showing a rare tangle. Because she really couldn't figure out Xiao Kinjao's meaning. Fan Kinjao spoke again, if I remember correctly, the person who was supporting me at that time seemed to be Aunt Lily from Fenji Palace. I guess it was this person who changed my clothes. Other concubines. It's not enough to trick the queen, but you also want to drag the lily next to the queen into the water? What a grudge against the queen is this? Concubine Yu looked at the situation with cold eyes, and the sneer on her lips became even deeper. Obviously, Fan Qinjiao knew that he was about to die soon, so he wanted to threaten the queen to help dispose of the clothes, otherwise he planned to bite back. Sure enough, her decision to execute Fan Qinjiao was right. Such a clever and cunning white-eyed wolf should have been killed early to avoid future troubles. Queen Zhen 11 looked at Fan Qinjiao silently for a while, and suddenly she said coldly and angrily, "How brave! You actually want to frame me? Princess Jingping, don't think that you have the emperor's attention. Just because you can be in the palace you can do whatever you want here." Fan Qinjiao seemed aggrieved and indifferent as he said, "I am just telling the truth. I don't understand what the queen means." Queen Zhen 11 looked at Fan Qinjiao and gritted her teeth secretly for a long time, then suddenly stood up and knelt in front of Emperor Yongchang. "Your Majesty, I have indeed taken in Princess Jingping, but I don't know about other things. Please send someone right now search Fenji Palace carefully to prove my innocence. Is it true that the queen has completely turned against Princess Jingping?" The official ladies and concubines present looked at the two men with splitting eyes, and they were not too surprised. After all, from the moment they met today, the queen looked down on Princess Jingping. "I just didn't expect Princess Jingping to be so courageous and dare to frame the queen so openly. What's more, Princess Jingping should be the one who unbolted the boat. Otherwise, why are you so shirking responsibility?" When this answer appeared in everyone's mind, the whole audience was shocked. Conspirate to murder the current emperor, frame the current queen. Princess Jingping, how brave is this? It is simply going to be lawless. Seeing this, the official ladies in the distance began to taunt Han Jingchen in whispers. Such a good family fortune was lost in vain, but his eyes were so blind that he became friends with a madman. Han Jingchen looked at the sarcastic official ladies around her with red eyes. If she wasn't in the palace, she would have wanted to roll up her sleeves and have a fight with these people. Fan Qinjiao doesn't think he would do such a vicious thing. Several official ladies in blue clothes who were kneeling on the ground also reacted belatedly. They all knelt down and kowtowed to beg the emperor to search Fenji Palace and restore their innocence. Concubine Panda would not miss the opportunity to clear her niece's grievances, and knelt on the ground again. For a time, everyone in Longjian Hall was targeting Fan Qinjiao. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 359. Chapter 359. I was so angry that I vomited blood. Concubine Yu had long seen that Concubine Panda wanted to seek refuge with the queen. Although Concubine Panda was not very favored in the harem, many friends are always better than many enemies. Especially I want to stand by the queen's side. Seeing everyone in Longjian Hall pleading, Concubine Yu knelt down on the ground without any haste. "Your Majesty, I think that since the queen wants to conduct a thorough investigation of Fenji Palace, it's okay for the emperor to give permission. Only in this way can the truth be revealed. Maybe we are all wrong about Princess Jingping. I don't know for sure." Concubine Yu periodically looked at the emperor. On the surface, he wanted to help Fan Qinjiao prove his innocence, but in fact, he completely declared Fan Qinjiao's death sentence. As long as the emperor reaches out, whether he can find the dress or not, Fan Qinjiao is dead. The veins on the backs of Emperor Yongchang's hands had bulged out. Looking at Fan Qinjiao's cold and piercing eyes, there was already a layer of murderous intent. "Come here. Search Fenji Palace quickly. Find me the clothes worn by Princess Jingping." Following the emperor's order, the guard standing outside the door turned and left again. The originally noisy Longjian Hall fell into complete silence. When everyone noticed the murderous aura in the emperor's body, they did not dare to breathe another breath. The emperor was so angry that he laid down millions of corpses. Even Concubine Yu, who wished Fan Kinjao would die now, closed her red lips. Emperor Yongchang stared at Fan Kinjao in front of him, and when he reached his lips, he could no longer restrain himself. It turns out that the so-called cleaning up the family and the so-called treating the prince's injuries are just ploys to get closer to him, and Fan Kinjao's real purpose is probably to avenge the Hua family man. The teacup in Emperor Yongchang's hand made a crackling sound. He gritted his teeth and finally couldn't help asking, "Fan Kinjao, what else do you have to say?" Fan Kinjao raised his cheeks slightly, his already fair face still extremely pale. Their eyes met, and the dark eyes trembled fiercely, and there was a slight redness in the eyes. If he hadn't held on with all his strength, the tears that had piled up in his eyes would have collapsed. Although Fan Kinjao didn't say a word from beginning to end, the unspeakable grievance was so painful that I felt pity for him. Even Emperor Yongchang frowned. There was anger, grievance, and countless sadness in that expression. But there is no guilty conscience. Could it be that? Princess Jingping, how could you do such a treasonous thing? In vain, I want to propose to the emperor that you be betrothed to the third prince as a concubine. Concubine you looked at Fan Kinjao with disappointment, and she let out two words first. Clear your tears. Amidst concubine Yu's heartbroken tears, the ruddy color condensed in Fan Kinjao's eyes lacked the meaning of distress. Emperor Yongchang looked at Fan Kinjao in deep thought. If Fan Kinjao really has such evil thoughts this time, he really can't stay. But that's okay, he was still struggling at first, but now he doesn't have to. Fan Kinjao seemed to be so terrified by the murderous gaze in Emperor Yongchang's eyes that he could not help but tremble slightly. When concubine Yu saw this, the smile on her lips became even thicker. The search of Fenji Palace was not very fast. Everyone was waiting in Longjian Palace and couldn't bear it any longer. Even concubine Yu had had enough of seeing Fan Kinjao's frightened look before she saw the guards leaving and returning. Seeing the captain of the guard holding a wet dress in his hand, concubine Yu's excitement reached its peak. Fan Kinjao, this bitch, can finally die. Your Majesty, this is the dress that was found in Fenji Palace. The captain of the guard knelt on the ground and slowly raised the long dress in his hand above his head. Concubine Yu couldn't hide the smile in her eyes and glanced at her, and the result was, I can't laugh anymore. Everyone looked at the long skirt tacitly, and they were also collectively stunned. Emperor Yongchang looked at the dress calmly for a long time, and then looked at Yuning in front of him. Are you sure the clothes of the villain you saw are blue? Yuning nodded swornly, I saw it with my own eyes, it's blue. As soon as these words came out, concubine Yu was so anxious that she wanted to rush over and cover Yuning's mouth. But in front of the emperor, she could do nothing. In the main hall, it fell into an eerie silence at some point. Yuning, who was kneeling in front, turned her head slightly in confusion when she saw that the emperor had not yet made a decision. It was this look that made her freeze in place. How is it possible? Why is the shirt the captain of the guard holds in his hands white? Concubine Yu couldn't laugh anymore and stared at Yuning fiercely. How on earth did you do this? Yuning also looked confused. She was sure that the clothes Fan Kinjao was wearing were blue. How could it become like this? Concubine Yu saw that Yuning's expression didn't seem like she had misremembered, so she couldn't help but said hurriedly, Your Majesty, the queen in Fenji Palace has thousands of clothes, who can be sure that this clothes must be? The queen is in trouble. Before concubine Yu could finish her words, Lily rushed in with an anxious and frightened look on her face. As if she sensed that something was wrong with the atmosphere in the hall, Lily stopped not far away and knelt on the ground in fear. Your Majesty, calm down, it's this servant who deserves to die. Empress Zhen 11 frowned angrily and said, the rules are becoming more and more unruly. How can we tolerate making noise in front of the emperor? Behi knelt on the ground and explained hurriedly, Queen Shi, I just saw a group of guards rushing into Fenji Palace to conduct a search. The result was that they only took Princess Kingping's wet clothes away. I didn't know it, but I just wanted to come and report to the queen immediately. So, this white dress really belongs to Princess Jingping? Although everyone present did not expect that such a mistake would happen, fortunately, there was no danger. They are all official ladies who have been accustomed to pampering since childhood. How can they be seen to be accustomed to bloodshed? If Yu Guifei's words are stuck in her throat, she can't go up or come down. His face turned purple all over. The timing of Beihe's appearance was really perfect. Although concubine Yu didn't believe that such a coincidence could really happen, looking at the emperor's relaxed expression, she knew that whatever she said was useless. Full of unwillingness was piled in her chest, and concubine Yu's eyes began to turn black. After planning such a big plan, Fan Qinjiao still failed to be executed in the end. How could concubine Yu not be angry? Concubine Yu was almost furious and looked in Fan Qinjiao's direction unwillingly. Who knows? Fan Qinjiao was also looking at her silently. When their eyes met, Fan Qinjiao's dark eyes no longer held the fear just now. Some are just silent sarcasm and chuckles. Something flashed past the alarm clock, and concubine Yu suddenly understood. Everything just happened was simply Fan Qinjiao's pretense. Although I don't know what method Fan Qinjiao used to turn the cyan clothes into white, from the beginning, Fan Qinjiao was absolutely sure that he could avert danger. So, has she been played by Fan Qinjiao? Concubine Yu looked in the direction of the queen without giving up. The result was that she saw Empress Zhen 11 sitting on the chair. Her graceful and noble face had long lost any trace of anger. Concubine Yu. So, has she been manipulated by Fan Qinjiao and the queen together? Thinking about Fan Qinjiao and Queen Zhen 11's pretense of turning against each other just now, thinking about Fan Qinjiao's pretended fear, and thinking about how stupid he was to beg the emperor to search Fenji Palace in person, concubine Yu felt something very hot in her chest. Just at this time, someone outside the palace made a report. Emperor Yongchang raised his hand to announce the person through the door, and saw Dr. Li kneeling on the ground carrying a medicine box. Your Majesty, the Princess of Heshuo County is under the protection of the Emperor. She enjoys the protection of Long En, and her mother and son are safe. Before Emperor Yongchang could speak, concubine Yu vomited a mouthful of blood. Everyone was frightened when they saw concubine Yu vomiting blood. Concubine Yu, however, squeezed her suffocated chest tightly, and her consciousness gradually became blurred. Fan Qinjiao is safe. The Princess of Heshuo County is also safe. How can concubine Yu be able to swallow this breath? In the end, concubine Yu passed out softly on the chair. Someone is coming quickly to help concubine Yu enter the side hall to rest. Mr. Li, hurry up and check your empress's pulse. Come here, come some more people. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 360. Chapter 360. Prince Heshuo has entered the palace. Although Emperor Yongchang had doubts about concubine Yu's coma and vomiting blood, after all, she was his beloved concubine, so he quickly had concubine Yu carried to a side hall for diagnosis and treatment by the imperial physician. Queen Zhen 11 felt extremely happy when she saw concubine Yu being lifted up by the palace attendants. The reason why Queen Zhen 11 just staged such a quarrel with each other was because she understood that Fan Qinjiao was deliberately trying to fan the flames. Although she was a little confused, she still cooperated with it. So what if no one in the world believes in Fan Qinjiao? As long as she believes it, that's enough. As expected, Xiao Qinjiao will never let her down. Even though concubine Yu is being carried down by the palace people now, Queen Zhen 11 is still very comfortable. Emperor Yongchang never expected that things would develop like this. But when he thought of Fan Qinjiao's aggrieved look just now, he still felt a little guilty. Fortunately, Fan Qinjiao was not directly convicted just now. Otherwise, Not only would the military salary for next year be wasted, but if this matter was spread, how would the people be stopped from talking about it? Thinking about this, Emperor Yongchang's complexion also softened slightly. Just because the commotion lasted for such a long time, Emperor Yongchang no longer wanted to continue the banquet, so he asked Bai Tu to send the official ladies out of the palace first. The ladies from the official family naturally didn't want to stay here any longer, so they hurriedly kowtowed and left. Fan Qinjiao also kowtowed to the emperor respectfully, then stood up and wanted to leave with a group of official ladies. From the beginning to the end, even though Bailey Fengming was right next to her, her eyes never stopped. Just the moment Fan Qinjiao turned around, that familiar stare filled his whole body again. Fan Qinjiao tensed up all his nerves instantly. However, her steps only paused, and then she continued walking towards the door. Bailey Fengming didn't care at all about Fan Qinjiao's departure. Even after Fan Qinjiao left, he frowned in disgust, then stood up and respectfully walked to stand next to the queen. These seemingly inconspicuous little actions could not escape the eyes of Emperor Yongchang. Han Jingchen, who had been waiting at the door for a long time, saw Fan Qinjiao coming out and hurriedly stepped forward and took her hand. "You scared me to death. How are you? Are you okay?" Fan Qinjiao smiled and shook his head. "It's okay, I'm just a little tired." "Since you are tired, go back and rest quickly. I will come to see you in a few days." Han Jingchen said this, but her face was still a little pale. She has been with Fan Qinjiao since entering the palace, and she knows very well what kind of clothes Fan Qinjiao wears. Although she believed that she was not wrong, and she didn't know why Fan Qinjiao's dress changed from cyan to white, these were no longer important. As long as people are safe, it is good. Fan Qinjiao naturally knew Han Jingchen's suspicion. It's true that her clothes are cyan, but no one knows that the blending of Andrographis paniculata, star blue, and ice arrow grass can swallow up all the colors, leaving only its own white color. It's just that this palace is a place that eats people without spitting out their bones, but some things cannot be said too straightforwardly. Before leaving the palace, a group of palace attendants hurried past Fan Qinjiao and Han Jingchen. Han Jingchen frowned. Now the palace servants are really becoming more and more unruly. Fan Qinjiao looked at the direction the palace man was heading and smiled. Concubine Yu was having a hard time, and the people in the palace who came to serve her were naturally very cautious. But no one knew that Concubine Yu passed out before her so-called big gift was delivered. What a pity. I can't see with my own eyes Concubine Yu's expression when she received the gift. Walking to the palace gate, Fan Qinjiao turned slightly and looked at the palace behind him. The familiar stare just now in Longyan Palace was obviously from Fan Swining. However, Fan Qinjiao was sure that Fan Swining did not exist in Longyan Hall. Where could such a big person be hidden even if he really hid it? "What's wrong?" Han Jingchen asked worriedly when she saw Fan Qinjiao stopping. Fan Qinjiao was silent for a long time, then shook his head and followed Han Jingchen out of the palace. Fan Swining has already appeared, so why should she be so anxious? Just stand there and wait for Fan Swining to slowly reveal his flaws. The ladies of the official family have left the palace, but Longyan Hall is still very lively. Not only is Yuning, who has just gained the emperor's favor, but also the unconscious concubine Yu. Empress Zhen 11 didn't have time to do anything here. She looked at the emperor with mixed feelings, and walked out with Lily's support. As soon as he returned to Fenji Palace, he saw Dr. Li kneeling on the ground. As soon as he saw the empress, Dr. Li kowtowed and admitted his mistake. Queen Zhen 11's face was calm, without any pity. She just looked at Dr. Li indifferently and said, "I have been very kind to you over the years, but you have a grudge against me because of a deputy judge. Remember back then, when you betrayed me, did you ever think about my situation? Now that you have no choice but to think about me again, Dr. Li, do you think I look like someone who was taken advantage of?" Physician Li knelt on the ground and trembled violently. Over the years, although the queen is the head of the harem, she has always been humble and has never had the slightest temper. So much so that he actually began to ignore the queen's existence. Now looking at the cold-eyed and majestic queen, Dr. Li felt that he was really wrong. The queen is the queen. No matter how much she has given in over the years, no one can shake her position. Mother Queen, please have mercy, I really realized my mistake. Queen Zhen 11 frowned and was too lazy to listen anymore. Mr. Li, since you chose to eat the inside and outside, you should know what kind of end you will get. If you cry for no reason, I must forgive you. If you want to be forgiven, you have to look at your own attitude. Physician Li was stunned again. After a long while, he kowtowed again and said, Wei Chen is willing to take responsibility for his crimes and make meritorious service. Don't worry, the queen, Wei Chen knows what to do. Queen Zhen 11 smiled faintly. Being a human being is like treating a doctor. Only by prescribing the right medicine can the disease be cured. It's just that I don't know much about medical matters. Dr. Li should go back. Physician Li was suddenly enlightened and quickly kowtowed to thank him. Looking at Dr. Li's hurried departure, Lily frowned and walked in. Your Majesty, you are kind. Empress Zhen 11 raised her hand to support her forehead. Since concubine you can bribe the people around me, I will retaliate in kind. At the moment, concubine you only has one person she can trust, Imperial Dr. Li. Before she can find another physician whom she can trust, concubine you will still have to trust Imperial Dr. Li no matter how hard-hearted she is. Cough cough cough, cough cough cough. A cough sounded from outside the door. Empress Zhen 11 hurriedly got up to check, and saw Bailey Fengming entering the door alone. If you don't go back to the East Palace to rest, what are you doing here? Queen Zhen 11 waved to Bailey Fengming. Bailey Fengming sat on the soft couch next to Queen Zhengzi and smiled lightly. Just now there was news from the Emperor that Prince Heshuo personally came to the palace to ask for an audience with the Emperor. Of course Queen Zhen 11 would not be so naive as to think that Prince Heshuo really came to express her gratitude to the Emperor. Bailey Fengming said again, someone in front of the Emperor saw that Prince Heshuo was holding a gold hairpin in his hand. Queen Zhengzi. Oh, it turned out to be a complaint. In Ziliang, not everyone can afford to wear gold. Not to mention that the high-ranking officials and nobles are just playing with jade. Looking at the concubines in the harem, how many of them have gold ornaments? Empress Zhengzi was originally surprised that Princess Heshuo was born prematurely, but now she seems to have found the answer. It seems that there is no peace over there in Yu Palace. Queen Zhen 11 smiled and rolled her eyes. As long as there was heartache there, she would be happy. The phoenixes roared for hundreds of miles, but they smiled and said nothing. Queen Zhen 11 called Lily to her side. Go and send a message to the old lady of the Hua family. Tell her that I am very worried after hearing about the affairs of the Xiao family and the Hua family, and ask her to come into the palace and sit down. Bailey Fengming was stunned. Queen Mother. Empress Zhen 11 patted her son on the shoulder and said, it makes no sense for Xiao Qinjiao to work so hard, but we are just sitting back and enjoying the results. Go back to your East Palace to prepare for the imperial edict of marriage. End of this chapter.